All right, welcome everyone. We're continuing our animation series, our master series on KeyShot animation. Dries will start here pretty soon, but I wanted to remind you very quickly about KeyShot World 2016 coming up in just a couple weeks. Today is actually the last day to get the early bird discount, so if you haven't yet, go ahead and register up. You can check out keyshot.com/renderworld for all the details. We have speakers, workshops, and other sessions going on. Speakers from Google, Nike, TB&O, Web2Lam, Design Studios. So you definitely want to be there and see how they're using KeyShot. It's over in Anaheim, California, so if you can, make your way out and you can get the early bird special through today only. So Dries is going to kick us off here with the animation, with the next section on animation, KeyShot animation. So Dries, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thanks for the intro, Josh. So we're just going to proceed with the scene we configured last week. So this is the state we reached last week, basically. So and also I want to remind you that this scene is available on GrabCAD, where it is uploaded and available together with the original SolidWorks assembly. So you can build it from scratch or like figure out how stuff was done. Also, the scene will be updated after this session to include the animation and the camera and material animation parts. So let me set things up for this session. I will enter performance mode just to speed up my rendering, and I will hide my ground plane. Maybe I can still show my ground plane. So let me play this one back. So this is what we did last week. We had the truck riding in, then we animated we faded some parts, we made an animation on the front wheel assembly, and yeah, after this is something I have added. I made a little turn on this truck so that it kind of comes into focus as it turns around the bend. So what we'll be doing in this session is work on camera and material animations. So let's get started with camera animations. In order to apply animations to a camera, you need to have cameras in your scene first. I went ahead and created a few cameras already. So these are pre-configured, and I will use them as a basis for this session. So what I want to do, let me scroll through my timeline again. Right where these parts start fading, I want to rotate my my view, animate my view, so that I'm looking at it straight. I'm looking straight at it, basically, to get a better view of this mechanism. And then when the parts fade back in, I want to return my view. So let's go ahead and enable activate camera 1, and I will set my time right at frame 151 at the 5-minute mark. In order to apply an animation to a camera, it's the same process as we covered for the part animation. we can either use the animation wizard, where we are prompted to make a selection for the camera animation. We have lots of different camera animations. We have orbit, zoom, inclination, translation. We can switch between two cameras. We can apply a panorama animation, Dolly, path, and depth of field. We will try to cover all of these in today's session. Next to the animation wizard, we can also apply camera animations through the camera section in the scene tree. So our active camera has this blue icon. I can now right-click here on the camera, and I'm going to apply an orbit. So this inserts an orbit animation. By default, the camera animations have a duration of 5 seconds. I will try to match the duration with the duration of these first fade animations, so that by the end of the fading I've made a 90 degrees rotation. You can see by default the orbit is a 360 degree rotation, so I will change this one and I will apply an orbit of -50. I will also change the motion easing and adjust the duration. I simply click in the second section and then hit the down arrow, and this will lower it by an increment of 1. So now, as I scrub to my timeline, I make a smooth orbit of -50 degrees, so that I'm looking straight at it now. Next to the orbit, I want to incline my camera upwards. So I will go back to this the starting point of my first camera animation, and I will again right-click on my active camera, and I will select inclination this time. And again, I get a 5-second animation. In this case, I want to look at the right angle down, so I'm going to enter 90 degrees. Again, set the easing and make it match the duration of the previous animation. As I now scrub to the timeline, you see the combined effect of the orbit and the inclination. Again, as with part animations, you can also toggle the visibility, which will activate and deactivate them. So now I'm just previewing the inclination, and you can clearly see what is going on. A nice help when working with camera animations is actually the geometry view. So if I open the geometry view by hitting the O key, you will notice that this view shows all the saved cameras in my scene. So all the cameras I have in this list are represented by these gray boxes in the geometry view. But you'll also notice that my active camera is this red camera with a visualization of the field of view, basically. So this is the framing of your image, and you also notice that there is a path being drawn here, and this is actually the path that the camera is following as it is animated. So as I scrub to the timeline, you can see that the camera is following the red path. And the nice thing about this is that you can see how smooth your animation is going to be. So for instance, if I change the easing and regenerate the path, you can see that my smoothness changes. So as I change the easing, I can hit this refresh camera animations path button, and then it recalculates this visualized path. But this is a nice way of seeing what the camera animations are doing. And of course this works if I make this one smaller. This works perfectly in sync with the real-time view. Another handy option, even if your real-time rendering is paused, is that you can switch the camera in a geometry view. If you hit this camera type button, you can switch it to the active camera. So now you see what you would see in real time. And if you now scrub to the timeline, you get a very fast visualization of your animations basically. So, but for now I will hide the geometry view and unpause my rendering. So we have this now. We'll go ahead and apply a dolly. So we will increase the distance from our camera to the object because I want a little more space around, basically around the top and the bottom. So I'm going to right click my camera again, hit dolly. I will again match it with my existing animation so far. Adjust the easing, the timing, and I will enter a value of minus or 50 like this. So as you notice, as I change these values, my real-time view gets updated. So what the dolly does is for any positive values, it will increase the distance of the camera to the object. So again, if you open the geometry view and change the view to perspective, you'll notice that if I change the dolly from 0 to 100, that the distance increases. And also this is taken into account to update the path. So now we have this smooth animation. Then we have one final animation to apply in this case, and that's going to be the translation. So I'm gonna go ahead and translate. Again, I'm gonna match the length with my previous animations, and I like to use the translation for cameras a lot to adjust basically the framing of my my subject, because as you notice on the left side, I have a little bit of a disparity between this left wheel and this right wheel. We can see more of the side walls of the wheel on the right and on the left, and this is because my object is not perfectly centered. So I can kind of adjust for this using a translation on the camera. And in this case, I will enter some values I have figured out before. And now as I apply these adjustments in the X direction, again, if you hit the if you hit the Z key on your keyboard, you'll get this little widget which shows the world coordinates of your scene. So I go ahead and pick this translation. It's the same. You get basically the same properties as for part animation, translation animations for parts. So you can apply a translation in X, Y, Z, and you can set the orientation to local or global. Local is going to be the local axis of the camera. Global is going to be the scene coordinates. In this case, I'm going to go for global, and I will adjust my values accordingly. So again, you'll notice as you change these values that your real-time view updates instantly. And now with these adjustments, I go from my standard view as I saved it in my camera, and I make a very smooth transition to basically a top view. So orbit, inclination, dolly, and translation, those are the standard camera animations. These are the ones that we've had since KeyShot 3. So these are probably the ones that you'll use the most for any product presentations. We have a few more specialist animations that we'll cover in a few moments. But for now, I will select all of them, and I will right-click on the animations, and I will add them to a folder. So, and I will call this view from top. So now they are inserted in the folder, and I can now see the mechanism much better, viewing it from the top. And as it fades out, I basically want to return my view. So, or I want to return my view starting from second 10, the 10th second. So I'm going to right-click on the folder that contains the camera animations, and I can click mirror on this folder. This will create a mirrored folder. So if I now drag this one to start at the 10-second mark, you'll notice as you drag folders or animations that you will get this pop-up showing the start, end, and duration. This is quite handy because as you drag these, you can sort of snap it into the correct timing without having to adjust the individual timings here. So as it shows that it starts at 10 seconds here, you can be sure that you've placed it right. So as I now scrub timeline again, my camera animations have been mirrored basically. In this case, I want these animations only to last 3 seconds, so I can simply hover over the end of this folder and click and drag, and this will shorten the duration of all contained animations. So now we've moved back out, and to make it a little bit more dramatic, I actually want to add a little bit of motion, a little bit of depth of field as well. So I will go to my camera, my original camera, and I will go ahead and enable depth of field. I will go out of performance mode, enable depth of field. If I select point of focus, I can click anywhere on the model to pull that section, that object into focus. In in this case I will have to increase my f-stop to around a value of 10 in this case. So, and I will, I think I'm happy with a focus distance of 395 and an f-stop value of 10. I will go ahead and save my camera, and you'll notice as I scroll through the timeline now that as this truck enters the scene, it's kind of fuzzy, but as it gets into position, the front end of the truck is now in perfect focus, and you get a nice subtle depth of field effect as you go to the back of the truck. You'll notice sometimes that you'll have to adjust some animations, or I could change some animations here. For maybe this dolly value doesn't quite work. So -50 gets everything into focus now. I'll have to adjust the other one in the mirrored instance as well. So in this case will be 50. That returns my view. So now as this truck is animated to go around the corner, basically, you'll notice that I have a very strong and undesirable depth of field effect. Now everything seems to be out of focus, and this is because the depth of field itself has not been animated yet. The depth of field works on this focus distance and f-stop, but the focus distance is kind of fixed for the camera, so it's out here somewhere in space, or this distance from the camera. Basically, this is the distance from the camera where things are in focus, which happens to be this little extrusion. So if I animate, things get out of focus, but I can fix this by applying a depth of field animation. This is new for KeyShot 6. So again, if I go to my camera, Cam 01, I right click, and I will now add a depth of field animation. So again, this adds this animation bar of 5 seconds. I will shorten it to match this steering animation, adjust the easing, and now let's have a look at these settings. So I'm now running, by the way, KeyShot 6.2 Pro, which is due to be released quite soon. There have been a number of fixes for animations and a few handy improvements. For instance, as you add the depth of field animation, by default it inserts the values for focus distance and f-stop that are actually saved in the camera that you applied the animation to. So in this case I have 395 and 10 respectively for distance and f-stop, and as I create the animation it inserts these values here. So what do we see here? We have a section from and a section to, and basically these parameters are animated to go from the from values to the to values. And there are nice functionalities here to make your life a little easier. If you select point of focus in the from section, it sets the current time at the beginning of the animation node, and again you can pick your point of focus. In this case we'll pick at the beginning, and as you select point of focus for the to section, it sets the current time at the end of the animation bar. And if we now click anywhere on the geometry, we now have this front perfectly in focus. We now see that we are using a to focus distance value of about 167. In this case, I can leave the f-stop unchanged. So if I now scroll through the animation, you'll notice that at the beginning my headlight is in perfect focus, and as I scrub this timeline, the depth of field is animated so that it looks nice at the end of the animation as well. So depth of field is a really nice way of working with cameras that have depth of field applied. One other thing I want to mention as this truck comes driving in, we have on the animation window toolbar, we have this icon for motion blur. So what motion blur does, if I enable it, it blurs out the animations that you have in your scene. It blurs out the motion so that it gives the appearance that even though it's a static real-time view, it gives the impression of movement. This effect is greater the higher the speed of your animations are. So as I move this one, the current time to the end of this entry animation, you'll notice that the blurring is kind of very subtle. But if I put this at this point, and let me just go ahead and disable depth of field, you'll notice that I have a lot of motion blur happening right here. You can see it quite well here at this rear tire. So motion blur is a nice effect of adding, of making your animation more dynamic. This will impact render time. So if you enable motion blur, your renderings are going to take a little longer, but still it's quite fast, especially for product rendering, and it does add a lot of realism, and I would suggest actually using this one. The results will be better than doing the motion blur in post-processing. That is also an option, obviously, but I usually prefer to work with the motion blur inside KeyShot. One new option, as we click on this little triangle, is to apply the motion blur to your models, parts, as well as cameras. By default, the camera option is unchecked, but as I click camera, now I get a preview of motion blur for both my camera and model animations. So that's for motion blur. So I think I'm done now with this sequence, and again this scene with the animations I applied will be made available as an updated scene on the GrabCat page where we posted last week's scene. So let's go ahead and create another animation, one that is new for KeyShot 6 as well, and we'll go ahead and work with the Panorama. So I've made a couple of scene sets in preparation, and I will enable the Ford Trucks scene set. So let me open the geometry view. What I have here is basically a pattern of 4 of those trucks, and now I have tied, so if I select the scene set, I tied camera 03 to this scene set. So now my camera 3 is active. And if I right click, I can select Panorama. So what Panorama does is basically pivot, rotate the camera around its own center. So whereas the orbit animation orbits around the look at point, let me open the geometry view again. The panorama actually rotates around its own center. So this is basically what you would call panning in real life. So you basically can turn your camera from left to right or right to left. The controls again are very simple. You simply have this rotation control. So as I enter 90, my camera is rotated 90 degrees, and now my next truck is in view. So I can duplicate these animations and basically make a whole round panorama. So that's panorama animation. Can be very useful in interiors where you want to rotate around the center of your camera to get a look, to get a feel of an interior space. And next up we have zoom as well. And let me go ahead and enable this zoom into details scene set. I want to give a quick example of how zoom can be used. What zoom does is basically alter the focal length of your saved camera. In this case I'm gonna work with camera 05, right click and apply a zoom animation. This has some similarities to the depth of field animation, as you basically animate from one value, from one focal length to another. Again, this takes by default the focal length animations that were saved in the camera as the from value, and then you are free to enter anything in these two input box. So as I now scrub the timeline, you notice, and this is behavior just like a real world camera, where a very long focal length lens is going to act like a zoom lens. So as I enter higher values for the 2 box, I'm basically zooming in on my product. If I now go ahead and apply a panorama to this as well and set it to a very small angle, and now play back, I can use a combination of zoom and for instance panorama to zoom in on details of a product. So that's one use case for zoom animations. I would however say that you should use zoom sparingly. Whenever you can, whenever you need to highlight a detail of a product, I would actually advise to use the Dolly animation. And the reason being is that dollying, meaning actually going closer or farther away from your subject, is going to be much more natural than using a zoom. People are not used to seeing zooming. So just to show what's happening, again open the geometry view and let me just enable the zoom. As I scroll, you'll notice that the camera position doesn't change. I just get a narrower field of view, so effectively zooming. This can be useful in some jewelry shots, or if you have if you had modeled a stage, for instance, with actors and you wanted to zoom in from the broad stage and focus on a prop or an actor, that's where zoom can be very handy. But I would advise just to use it if your camera is stationary, because it gets very confusing if your camera is orbiting and being translated and then applying a zoom. It's going to be very confusing for people to follow, basically. So then I would like to highlight another one, a final camera animation, and I'm going to enable the camera path animation, and I'm going to use a camera path. So the idea here is that I'm going to create a path where my camera is basically going to go straight ahead and then duck and then go underneath this truck. So, and for this I will enable the geometry view, and this is really a nice way of working with the camera path animation. And in this case I will go and animate the Cam 02 front camera. I will right click and select path. This will give me a camera path input box where I can add new control points for my path animation. So with the path command I can basically create a custom path that my camera is going to follow. So okay, I can, let me make this one smaller. In my real-time view, as I move my camera forward, and for this I'm holding on Windows Alt and right mouse button, and as I hold and drag my mouse I can basically dolly my camera. You can find these commands if you hit K, so you get all the camera shortcuts, and the one I used was Alt plus right mouse button drag, which is Dolly. If you hit K, you get this hotkey list for both PC and Mac. So I now move my camera. I can now hit this plus, and as I dolly in, you can see I have this yellow marker. This is the point that is going to be added for my path. Again, I will hit new control point, move my camera in, add new control point, and instead of moving my camera now, I can actually select a saved camera. In this case, I'm going to select camera 02 back. As I select this one, it's going to basically snap the view to this camera, and if I hit add new control point now, it's going to add this position as a control point. If I now click OK, I have my camera path. Right now it is basically going straight through this truck. What I want is to adjust my control points so that my camera basically ducks beneath this truck. So I will click on this control point. As I click the control point in my geometry view, it's highlighted here in the animation properties as well. So as I click it, right click, can select move control point. I now get this move triad where I can simply drag it into position. So I will drag the last one, or the second to last. I will drag it so that it sits right at the back of this truck. Okay, we'll click this control point, move control point, and move this one so that it fits right in front, sits right in front of this truck like this. And to get a more sudden change of direction, I will select this one, and again I will select this point, right click, move control point, and instead of using this move triad now, I can also again dolly in. You'll notice that my camera position is changing in the geometry view as well. I can dolly in, and now I can right click in the background of the geometry view, select save position, and now it basically sets the position of the control point based on the view that I set in real time. And then I can still adjust using the move triad. And the nice thing is, again, with every update, as you move the control points, you see a visualization of the actual path. So if I now hide the geometry view and play back the path, I'm now ducking right underneath the truck and going back up. Oh yeah, one other final animation, one other final thing we can add is a switch event where we can switch from one camera to another. And you saw that I used the saved camera cam02 back 1 as a final control point, but I basically now want to turn my camera around, so I'm gonna create another path starting from this camera and ending with camera 2, which is basically looking at the rear of this truck. So I can do this by adding a camera switch event. So I will right click my active camera, camera 02 front, go to camera switch event, where I can select camera to switch to, which is going to be camera back 1. I will hit no here. Now I can see that I'm switching to camera 02 back 1, which is this camera. And again, I can here apply a path animation. It's going to take the first camera position as the first control point. I will now select the final camera. Then after I've selected it, add it as a new control point, which draws the path. And now as I play back, it basically moves the camera between this one and that one. So if I play back the entire thing, camera ducks underneath the truck, then switches to the other camera and turns around and looks at the back of this truck. So I think that is it for camera animations. Now we have another important one to cover, and that's going to be material animations. So I go ahead to the, let's pick this one. No, let's pick this one. Get rid of all the animations. So in this case, I want to animate the orange plastic to another material. So material animations are to be applied on the material level. As I double click a material, you get, for any textural parameters, you get these thumbnails, these texture thumbnails, whenever you have this texture thumbnail, if you right click it, which is maybe something you haven't tried before, but if you right click it, you get options for textures, utilities, but also animations. So color and number fade are the material animations we have available today. In this case, if I, for the diffuse color, right click animation color fade, if I apply color fade, it is going to add a sort of gradient which is going to be animated. As you noticed, maybe perhaps, as I added the color fade, it inserted a animation folder here, which by default has the name of the material where the animation is applied to, and it has the name of the color fade animation as well. In this case, I can name it to diffuse orange to blue. If I now scrub the timeline, you can see that my material color is being animated. So that's one way of adding the animations for the material properties. As I enter material graph, and I see that I've configured a few things already. Let me get rid of these. So as you enter the material graph, you see the connection here as well. You see the plastic material with a connection, a color fade connection to the diffuse color. So if you were to start from scratch applying an animation to materials in the material graph, just deleted these color fade, you can right click in this background of the material graph, go to animation color fade, which in the material graph is going to add a red to blue gradient by default. You can then drag from this output orb onto diffuse, and so now I have again this default 1 second material animation. Where I scrub it, the diffuse color is going to be animated from red to blue. But we can do lots more advanced stuff with animated materials in the material graph. So let's say we don't want to change the properties of this plastic, but we want to apply a metal label where we want to transition the material from a plastic to a metal, for instance, at a specific time. So I can right click in the material graph, go to material, and then metal. I can now drag the metal onto the plastic, which is going to apply it as a label. So as I double click the plastic, go to the label tab, then I see the metal as a label. Let me go ahead and change a few of these properties. We'll add a little bit of roughness to make it a little more interesting. What I want to do now is to start off with the plastic and then at, for instance, the 2-second mark, make a transition to the metal. So I will enable the metal label again. To hide the properties of nodes, by the way, I hit the spacebar. This gives me a bit more room to work with. So I will right-click in the view, go to animation, color fade. What I want to do now is animate the opacity of the metal label, and I want to use a gradient, a color fade for it, and I'm going to set the first pin to black and the second pin to white, and if I use this for an opacity, then this black is going to be totally transparent, white is going to be totally opaque. So I will connect the color fade to the opacity, and I will simply drag it onto the metal and select opacity. So now I have this animation, and I'm going to drag it to the 2-second mark. And if I now scrub to my timeline, my material is animated from a plastic into a metal. I can also double click the color fade node, where I can give it a name. In this case, I will call it fade to metal. It also gets updated here in the animation timeline. And now I can even add any number of materials. So maybe I want to make a transition to a metallic paint. So I will add a metallic paint. So I can apply this as a label, or even if it's not connected, if I hit the C key, this gives me a red coloring of the metallic paint, and I get a preview in real time of what this shader is going to look like. I will double click my metallic paint, and I'm gonna quickly configure it to make it a little bit more interesting. So set a base color, apply some metal color, increase the metal coverage like this. Maybe add some flakes. Looks good enough. So hit C again to disable the preview. I can now drag this metallic paint onto the plastic. By default, yeah, this has full opacity, so now this label is overriding any previous animations. So as I now screw up the timeline, you see no animation of the material anymore, and this is because the metallic paint is put on top as a label of on top of the metal label, and on top of the plastic as well, because this material, metallic paint, has not been masked out. So if I double click the plastic, go to labels, you will see the metallic paint listed first. So, but I can go ahead and I can select the color fade that I apply to the metal, right click, duplicate this one. This gives me a copy with the same settings as the original. I can drag this onto the opacity as well, and instead of fade to metal, I will call this fade to metallic paint. So this gets added in the same folder because we're still animating the same material, but now I can drag the fade to metallic paint a little bit further out, maybe like this. And as I now scrub the timeline, I go from a plastic over into a metal, and then at this point in time it transfers into a metallic paint. So the material graph and the animations are a really powerful way of making transitions between materials. There's a lot of flexibility here, and this is just color fade. If we double click the tire, for instance, this is a plastic, but we could also right click and add a number fade, which we haven't covered yet. The number fade basically animates from one value to another, and I can use this to animate any material. So if I double click the tire, for instance, this is a plastic, but we could also right click and add a number fade, which we haven't covered yet. The number fade basically animates from one value to another. And I can use this to animate any material. any parameter that can be controlled by a number. So roughness, refraction index can all be animated with a number fade. And say we wanted to animate the roughness of this wheel. So we could double click the number fade and set maybe from 0, which is going to be perfectly shiny if we map it to roughness, to 0.2. If we now connect this onto the roughness, it's going to add again a map for the material, which is Lego tire, which is the material shared across these 4 tires. If we now drag the timeline, we see that at 0 seconds the wheels are perfectly shiny, having roughness 0, and as we drag this one, it is animated to have a roughness of 0.2. So there's a lot of powerful ways of using this. Another application that I quickly want to highlight is that it can be used to drive texture parameters, for instance. So if I go to textures and pick one of the default textures that is shipped with KeyShot, for instance this chipped metal texture, drag it onto this this gray material. Okay, I will double click this material, again open the material graph, right click again in the background, select animation number fade. If I now click, drag and drop it onto the texture map, I get options to animate. So I can animate the shift of the texture, I can animate the angle, animate the depth if it's applied as a normal projected texture. I can even animate the bump height, brightness, contrast. Let me attach it to angle, for instance. And as I double click the number fade, I will call it angle fade, for instance, and I will animate it from 0 to 90. As I now drag the timeline, you see that my texture is rotated 90 degrees. I can break this connection and drag it onto the shift. As I now drag my timeline, my texture is shifted from 0 to 1. Then it's shifted by 1 scene unit. In this case it's millimeters. I can enter, for instance, a value of 20, so now my texture is shifted 20 millimeters. So there's lots of applications for this. You could animate opacity maps, so lots of possibilities here. So I think we're close to being almost timed out. I think this would be a good time to round off. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Josh, were there any questions I should cover?
Not too many this time. I had some questions on adjusting the camera's position in terms of time. I basically pointed out the properties box. Maybe you can show that and show how you would adjust the time in the camera path for a camera.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so one limitation right now is that it is one path, so you cannot really control the timing of individual control points, but you can adjust the easing as for any animation. What you can do of course, is adjust the control point positions. So as you have your path drawn, you can select any control point, move it. If you want to increase the time of your animation, of your path, you can, of course, increase the decrease or increase the length of this node, which will make it go faster or slower. But this is also why I mentioned the technique of using the switch event. So because now you basically can split up a long path into multiple sections if you use multiple saves cameras, and now you can control the speed and the timing of these sections individually. So if you're working with paths, and especially for interiors, then I suggest breaking up a long chain of movement into smaller sections and using the switch events to switch between different cameras. So you can actually like have a little pause even as you create a little offset, you can create a little pause between each path segment. So that's how I would work with timing of path animations. Any more questions?
Not right now. And if you do have more questions, feel free to stop by the forums and ask there. We can show examples and have a better discussion on the forums. And for those who joined in halfway through, be sure to check out keyshot.com/renderworld and see our event coming up in May. All right. Thanks again, everyone.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.